Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the most influential spiritual teachers of the 20th century, brought ancient yogic wisdom to the Western world with a message that resonated deeply with seekers of truth. Among his many profound teachings, one stands out as particularly transformative in our modern age of disconnection and self-doubt: the principle that self-love is the essential foundation upon which all genuine love must be built. This is not the narcissistic self-absorption that contemporary culture sometimes mistakes for self-love, but rather a deep, spiritual recognition of the divine nature within oneself. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, give me a like, comment below about your thought and hit subscribe button so you don't miss any video inspired by Yogananda's teaching. Thank you very much. When Yogananda spoke of self-love, he was addressing something far more profound than mere self-esteem or positive thinking. He was pointing toward a fundamental spiritual truth that has been echoed across wisdom traditions throughout human history. To love oneself, in the yogic sense, is to recognize and honor the presence of the divine within. It is to understand that the same infinite consciousness that animates the universe also dwells within each human heart. This recognition transforms self-love from a psychological concept into a spiritual practice, one that opens the door to experiencing universal love. The challenge many people face is that they have been conditioned to view self-love as selfish or egotistical. Religious and cultural teachings have sometimes emphasized self-denial and self-sacrifice to such an extent that people feel guilty for attending to their own needs or acknowledging their own worth. Yet this misunderstanding creates a fundamental problem: how can we truly love others if we have not first learned to love ourselves? It is like trying to pour water from an empty vessel. The love we offer to others, when it does not flow from a foundation of self-love, becomes depleted, resentful, or conditional. Yogananda taught that the soul is inherently perfect, a reflection of divine consciousness. When we fail to love ourselves, we are essentially rejecting this divine nature. We are saying that God's creation, as manifested in our own being, is somehow flawed or unworthy. This is a form of spiritual blindness that cuts us off from the source of all love. By contrast, when we cultivate genuine self-love, we are acknowledging and celebrating the divine spark within us. We are aligning ourselves with the truth of our being. This understanding has profound implications for how we approach relationships and our capacity to love others. Many people enter into relationships seeking validation, completion, or rescue from their own sense of inadequacy. They look to another person to fill the void they feel within themselves. But this approach to love is fundamentally flawed because it places an impossible burden on the other person. No human being can fill the emptiness that comes from a lack of self-love. When we depend on others to make us feel worthy or complete, we create relationships based on need rather than genuine love. True love, as Yogananda taught, flows from a place of wholeness and abundance. When we have cultivated self-love, we no longer need others to validate our existence or prove our worth. Instead, we can offer love freely, without expectation or demand. We can appreciate others for who they are rather than for what they can give us. This is the difference between conditional love, which says, "I love you because you meet my needs," and unconditional love, which says, "I love you because love is my nature." The practice of self-love begins with self-awareness. We must learn to observe ourselves with honesty and compassion, recognizing both our strengths and our weaknesses without judgment. This requires developing what Yogananda called the witness consciousness, the ability to observe our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors from a place of detached awareness. When we can witness ourselves in this way, we begin to see that we are not our thoughts or our emotions. We are the consciousness that observes them. This realization is liberating because it means that our mistakes, failures, and imperfections do not define us. They are simply experiences passing through the eternal consciousness that we truly are. Self-love also requires that we learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and compassion that we would offer to a beloved friend. Many people have an inner critic that constantly judges and condemns them, pointing out every flaw and mistake. This harsh inner voice is often internalized from critical parents, teachers, or cultural messages. But Yogananda taught that we must learn to replace this critical voice with one of loving encouragement. We must become our own best friend, offering ourselves patience, understanding, and forgiveness. Forgiveness is indeed a crucial aspect of self-love. We all make mistakes, act in ways we later regret, and fall short of our own ideals. If we cannot forgive ourselves for these human failings, we remain trapped in guilt and shame, unable to move forward on our spiritual path. Yogananda emphasized that God's love is unconditional and that divine forgiveness is always available to us. To refuse to forgive ourselves is to reject this divine grace. It is to hold ourselves to a standard of perfection that even God does not demand. The cultivation of self-love is also intimately connected with the practice of self-care. This means attending to our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs with the same care and attention we would give to someone we deeply love. It means nourishing our bodies with healthy food, adequate rest, and regular exercise. It means creating space for activities that bring us joy and fulfillment. It means setting healthy boundaries in our relationships and learning to say no when necessary. It means making time for meditation, prayer, and other spiritual practices that connect us with our deeper nature. Many people resist self-care because they have been taught that it is selfish to put their own needs first. But Yogananda would say that this is a misunderstanding of the nature of love. When we take care of ourselves, we are better able to serve others. When we are depleted, exhausted, and running on empty, we have nothing to give. By contrast, when we are nourished and fulfilled, our love naturally overflows to others. This is why the instruction given on airplanes to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others is not just practical advice but also a spiritual principle. Self-love also involves accepting ourselves exactly as we are in this moment, while simultaneously holding a vision of who we are becoming. This is a delicate balance. On one hand, we must not reject or condemn our current state, with all its imperfections and limitations. We must embrace ourselves with compassion and understanding. On the other hand, we must not become complacent or resigned to our current limitations. We must recognize that we are spiritual beings on a journey of growth and evolution. Self-love means honoring both where we are and where we are going. Yogananda taught that meditation is one of the most powerful tools for cultivating self-love because it allows us to experience our true nature directly. In the silence of deep meditation, we can touch the infinite consciousness that is our essence. We can experience ourselves as pure awareness, beyond all the labels, roles, and identities that we normally identify with. This direct experience of our divine nature naturally gives rise to self-love because we recognize that we are not separate from God but are expressions of divine consciousness itself. The relationship between self-love and love for others is not one of opposition but of continuity. As we deepen in self-love, our capacity to love others naturally expands. This is because we begin to recognize that the same divine consciousness that dwells within us also dwells within every other being. The boundaries between self and other begin to dissolve, and we experience what Yogananda called cosmic consciousness, the awareness of our unity with all life. From this perspective, loving others is simply an extension of loving ourselves because we recognize that at the deepest level, there is no separation. This understanding has profound implications for how we treat others. When we truly love ourselves, we cannot help but treat others with respect and compassion because we see them as reflections of the same divine consciousness that we honor within ourselves. Conversely, when we mistreat others, we are ultimately harming ourselves because we are reinforcing the illusion of separation. Every act of kindness toward others is also an act of self-love, and every act of cruelty toward others is also an act of self-harm. The journey of self-love is not always easy. We live in a culture that constantly bombards us with messages that we are not enough, that we need to be thinner, richer, more successful, more attractive, or more accomplished to be worthy of love. These messages create a constant state of dissatisfaction and self-rejection. To cultivate self-love in such an environment requires conscious effort and spiritual practice. It requires that we regularly disconnect from these external messages and reconnect with our inner truth. Yogananda's teachings offer us a path through this challenge. He reminds us that our worth is not determined by external achievements or the opinions of others. Our worth is inherent in our nature as expressions of divine consciousness. We are worthy of love simply because we exist. This is not something we need to earn or prove. It is our birthright as children of the divine. As we cultivate self-love, we also develop the capacity for what Yogananda called divine love, a love that is unconditional, unlimited, and all-encompassing. This is the love that flows from God to all creation, and it is the love that we are capable of experiencing and expressing when we align ourselves with our true nature. Divine love does not depend on the worthiness of its object. It flows freely to all beings, regardless of their actions or qualities. This is the love that Jesus spoke of when he said to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. It is the love that sees beyond surface appearances to the divine essence within every being. The practice of self-love, then, is not an end in itself but a gateway to experiencing and expressing this divine love. When we love ourselves, we are not indulging in narcissism or self-absorption. We are opening ourselves to the flow of divine love that seeks to express itself through us. We are becoming channels for the love that is the very essence of the universe. This is why Yogananda taught that self-love is the first step toward real love. Without it, our love remains limited, conditional, and ultimately unsatisfying. With it, we open ourselves to the infinite ocean of divine love that is our true nature and our ultimate destiny. In conclusion, Yogananda's teaching that self-love is the foundation of real love offers us a transformative path forward in our relationships and our spiritual lives. It calls us to recognize and honor the divine nature within ourselves, to treat ourselves with compassion and kindness, and to cultivate the inner wholeness that allows us to love others freely and unconditionally. This is not a selfish or narcissistic path but rather a deeply spiritual one that leads us toward the realization of our unity with all life and our capacity to express the infinite love that is the essence of the divine. By beginning with self-love, we set ourselves on a journey that ultimately leads to the experience of universal love, the recognition that love is not something we do but something we are.